when you're watching Toy Story 3, I mean, what can you really say that hasn't already been said about this movie? It's genuinely the best trilogy ever. You know what I mean? It's such a perfect send off, it's such a perfect ending. And I really feel like, because the way that they set it up was that, like, Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2 came out pretty early on. You know what I mean? They were relatively close to each other. And Toy Story 2 did such an amazing job. It was such a perfect sequel. It's like, how do you follow that up? And I think that because Pixar had so much time in between, they really were able to, get across to the audience that, like, time has gone by, you know what I mean? And Pixar has also released lots of projects: Finding Nemo, Monsters Incorporated, Cars, Ratatouille, Wally, right? Up. They have so much in their catalog that they've built up to that when Toy Story 3 dropped, it's like, oh, let's see what's going on with them, you know what I mean? The toys, how have they, what's going on with Andy, and stuff. And now Andy's all grown up, he's going to college, he's becoming an adult now. And it's one of those things where you can only get that true genuine story because of that passage of time, because you allow people to grow up, you know what I mean? And people who watched Toy Story when they were kids, when the movie first came out, have all grown up as well, you know what I mean? And there's even more of a weight to it, you know what I mean? That passage of time it means something, And there's so much about this movie that's just so loved and so taken care of. I think that they were the writers and the whole Pixar team were so creative with bringing going back into Toy Story, because I love the idea of Sunnyside Daycare. I love the idea of the toys feeling betrayed, or I don't know. It just feels like there's so much there. They put so much meat on the bone for us to take in. You know what I mean? And watching how everybody reacts. But first, the creativity part comes from the beginning. The opening sequence where we see Andy doing a little bit of playtime, and we kind of see all of the toys come out and have fun and, like, get a genuine, like, I don't know, like, kind of like a cinematic part. You know what I mean? I love that. I thought that was true genius. Was watching the toys, like, in Andy's imagination, what he imagines when he plays with them, And it's kind of that thing, like, it's like SpongeBob in the box. You know what I'm talking about? SpongeBob and Patrick in that box. And Squidward is like, they're creating this whole adventure, this whole story, and they're just sitting in that box. And he opens the box, and it's just SpongeBob and Patrick sitting there. And he's like, what the? How are they making, like, movie quality out of this? You know what I mean? And then we cut to Andy playing with them, and they show, like, the reality side to it, and it's all fun, and then we see Andy grow up. We see him play with his toys throughout the years, you know what I mean, as he grows up and he becomes an adult. And it's so cool to see that passage of time, because it's like what was going on off camera, you know what I mean? I feel like in the first movie he was moving, so we didn't really get to, like, I mean, we saw him, but we didn't get to see a whole lot of him. And they do that often, you know what I mean? Even in this movie, he's not really in the movie all that much, but he's definitely, like, a part of the story. And getting to see him, like, play with his toys, getting to see that he, like, basically has, like, them as his best friends, at home or whatever, you know what I mean? Obviously, he's still at school, he has friends there and stuff. I mean, he literally had a birthday party where people were bringing him gifts, so that's cool. But, like, stuff like that is really cool to see. So, anyways, seeing that passage of time was just, like, necessary, to the story. And what happens to Woody and Buzz and everybody else when Andy grows up and he no longer plays with them, you know what I mean? He has them in a chest, toy box, or in one of his chests or whatever, and he doesn't play with them, and they're trying to, like, get him to play with them, you know what I'm saying? And they're already making plans for being in the attic, living in the attic, They're already coming up with, like, hey, and when Andy has kids of his own, he'll have, they'll play with us too and stuff like that, you know what I mean? They already have, like, long-term plans for the next who knows how long, You know what I mean? How long they'll have to wait? How long until Andy starts having kids? How long until they're old enough to play with them? How long until this or that? You know what I mean? And I really like the idea of Andy being too old for his toys, but the toys still needing some sort of love and care and, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're toys, you know? They're not meant to be on waiting, so to speak. It's like they're supposed to be played with, you know? And so I thought that was a really cool idea, donating them to the daycare that other kids could play with them. And then I like the idea of like the daycare just cycling out children, right? Because it's, you have the, when the kids grow up, the new kids will come in, and the new kids will come in, and new kids will come into the daycare and play with the toys. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like there's a no end to it. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about having one person who grows up and then abandons you, like Jesse had with Emily, and what she's feeling, what everybody's feeling now with Andy. It's now like, oh, we have a new person to kind of like, a new kid who's gonna cherish us and play with us and love us. You know what I'm saying? And then the next kid, and then the next kid, and then the next kid. It's that cycle, and that's really appealing when Lotso Bear obviously presents it. And I don't know. I feel this like there's a really big like I connect to it a lot because it's just like, yo, you don't need to have one. You can have a lot. You know what I'm saying? Time and time again, you can have new kids, and that's really appealing. And rewatching it, I was just kind of like, oh man, that's got to be like heaven for toys. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, there are some downsides to Sunnyside Daycare, but I'm mostly focusing on the happy side. But anyways, um, the drama of it, of Andy trying to put them up in the attic, but he put them in a trash bag and stuff like that. Like, that whole sequence was really creative and really smart. The way that they created the drama, or they made it out to be, and stuff like that, I thought it was really really cool. Um, Using Rex's tail to poke through the garbage trash bag was good too. I also love Ham's like what's it called? I love Ham's knowledge of things. He's just like, oh, there's no point. This is triple polyether polyethylene, plastic and stuff like that. I thought that's really funny, that like that knowledge that he has. Um, but yeah, again, it's just getting back to like, what do the toys feel, and then what actually happens. You know what I mean? And it's not like Jesse and the others don't love Andy. It's just more so that like, we have to get it together, and we're all grown up. He's all grown up. We have to move on. We have to find new people who are going to take care of us and love us. Play with us. And it's Woody kind of feeling like we have somebody who cares about us, who loves us, who kept us after all these years, when he could have not, you know what I mean? And so it was really interesting to see the back and forth, where it's like Jesse believes that Andy threw them out. And that's not hard to believe, because he put them in trash bags. They were put out onto the curb. Like, it's not hard to put two and two together. But also Woody is telling him that like he meant to put them in the attic and stuff like that, and it was an accident and whatnot. Things like that, where there you can understand the division. Obviously Woody's right. You know what I'm saying? But I felt like the trip to daycare was a necessary trip. They needed to go to daycare to understand like what else is out there. You know what I mean? What are some of the alternatives? And that's a necessary journey they had to take. And I really admire everybody for going on that trip. And then seeing the outcome was the devastating part. And then Woody's breakout was also really cool. That was another piece of great creativity, was seeing Woody like fly over the thing and then fly back up and then land down. All of that was really cool and interesting, I thought. What else is there? it. All right, let's get into the villain, Lotso Hugging Bear. I thought, what a great. I mean, just think about like thinking about the Toy Story villain, which was Sid trying to blow up and destroy the toys, and then thinking about Prospector, and then thinking about Lotso Hugging Bear. They're all obviously Sid's a human, and he's just like a sadistic, like blowing up toys kind of kid. And then Prospector and Lotso Hugging Bear are really similar in a lot of ways, but I feel like Lotso Hugging Bear has something that Prospector didn't have, which was he was actually played with. You know, he actually had somebody who loved him, and then he got lost, and then he got replaced. I think that's kind of like one of those feelings, one of those moments where you can kind of be like, oh wow, you know, that betrayal, the hurt, the replacement of it all. It's like you can really understand it, but you don't agree with it. You know what I mean? How he's treating the daycare like a prison, how he's using people, how he manipulates Buzz and gets everybody to like, you know, basically like get it's a hierarchy, you know what I mean? And nobody likes that. So anyways, my probably oh man, I forget the voice actor's name. Such an incredible job by him. And a huge shout out to the Pixar team for making this character like lovable and kind of warm, but then also can be capable of great. You know what I mean? Like that duality of the bear is really cool to me. Obviously, Big Baby and the other toys are interesting, but man, what it's just me gushing over the characters that they come up with, and they did such a great job with everybody in this Toy Story 3. And one of the things that I like about Toy Story 3 was it feels like everybody has a role to play. Not that they didn't before, like when they were obviously trying to rescue Woody in Toy Story 2, or when Woody and Buzz are trying to get back, but it felt more like in this movie everybody had feelings and a part to play and a way to go about things. You know, Mr. Potato Head had a lot to do, you know what I mean? Mrs. Potato Head was giving us some extra context, you know, because she left her eye behind. And then Barbie had a role to play, which I thought was really cool. And then Rex and Ham, like they were all working together, you know? It was necessary to get everybody involved in the scheme. It's kind of like an Ocean's 11 prison break, you know what I mean? I love that, and I thought that was really cool. And speaking of Lotso, the backstory that was told through Chuckles was really good. That whole Bonnie playtime is just like really funny, getting introduced to new toys and seeing like Woody get played with again. And that whole feeling was, I imagine, like just seeing his blank expression, you can see that he's having a good time, you know? He's in the imagination. He's in Bonnie's world, and he's being actually like played with and taken care of, you know? And then Woody finds out about Sunnyside, and he talks to Chuckles, and Chuckles tells him the story. Like that whole thing is really, really, really cool. And you get the sense that like what's it called? You get the sense that Lotso Huggin' Bear has been there for like a long, long time, but it could actually only have been like maybe a few years, you know? It's hard to gauge like how long ago Lotso Huggin' Bear came out and how long like he got replaced for, but it's so interesting. Like you could just come up with like, oh, it came out this year, you know what I mean? Because so much time has passed, you know? So many toys have been hurt or lost or replaced and things like that, you know? So anyways, Woody getting the backstory and then having to choose that like Andy's leaving soon, and I'm going to college with him, or I go save my friends. And then Woody goes to save his friends at Sunnyside, and he has to come up with the prison break idea. And it's just so cool the way that they all come up with it and their plan coming to work. Like that whole sequence, up until obviously they get caught. But that whole sequence is creativity at its finest. And a huge shout out to the Pixar team who made this, because, man, to this day, like, just a true gem of a daycare prison break is so cool. You know what I mean? Woody being obviously at the front, leading the team. Buzz has, they have to save Buzz because he's gotten reset and stuff like that. All of that is so cool and interesting to me. And I feel like they handled it with so much care, and they made it really smart. They made it really ingenious. And I just really love the way that they got creative with it. And that whole sequence, like the whole time you're watching it, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, they did that, and then they did this, and then, oh, something goes wrong, but then something goes right, and then something weird happens, you know what I mean? Buzz starts speaking Spanish, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's so fun and wacky and weird and like goes completely different, I love that. And Spanish Buzz is definitely a highlight of the whole movie, because it's so unexpected. It's so, you don't expect that to happen, but it happens, and it's like, whoa, how did this all go? You know what I mean? And Spanish Buzz has like a new voice actor, which I thought was really funny. They just make him like classic like soap opera Spanish. I thought that was really funny. But anyways, the prison break goes off, and then the confrontation between Lotso and Woody and everybody else about to get pushed into the dumpster. My favorite portion of the movie is there in that confrontation of Woody confronting Lotso Bear about Daisy and telling him about what's going on. And damn, like, one of those moments where the dialogue is so pure. The dialogue feels so good. Everybody's getting a piece of that, you know what I mean? And Woody and Lotso Bear having that conflict of owner, no owner, love and no love. What's next for toys, And Lotso Bear kind of feeling like this resentment towards people, you know what I mean? This misanthrope, being a misanthrope, misanthropy towards people, right? It's so realistic, you know what I mean? To feel that betrayal and that hurt, and to eventually be like, yo, we're all about to get thrown away, you know what I mean? We're all about to get used and neglected and forgotten, But Woody brings up the argument that it's like, no, it was an accident, you know what I mean? Nobody plans or expects those things to happen, but you don't get to take it out on everybody else just because you got lost, just because you got replaced. You were loved, and you know what it's like to be loved. And yet you keep us trapped here, and you keep us held down by your standards or your rules or the way you expect things to be. You get loved and cherished by a new kid every so often, but then the other toys have to struggle and survive in the caterpillar room, and you're treating it like, well, you're a strong toy, you handle it, you take care of it. Us weaker toys have to get the pleasure and the niceness of being in the butterfly room. And that kind of like dictatorship or that force on everybody shouldn't be there. He knows what it's like to be loved, and yet he wants it all for himself. He's selfish about it, and he wants the other ones to suffer so that way they understand what it's like to be abused and messed up, just like he feels. And gosh, it's so powerful. It feels so good to have like that kind of a dialogue in a Toy Story 3, And it's like, she loved you as much as any kid ever loved a toy, And now we're trying to get home to ours, and you can't make the argument that they don't love us because you felt it, And he kept us after all this time, And so Lotso doesn't really have an argument for that. Instead, he just gets over emotional and yells at Big Baby. He gets thrown into the dumpster, and then everybody gets thrown into the dumpster. Except for Barbie. Barbie stays with Ken, of course. And everybody goes to the dump. And there's a great sequence with Buzz and Jesse where, I mean, Spanish Buzz goes after Jesse. He's like, Senorita, Senorita, ¿dónde está? And then she's like, Buzz! And then he goes in that rescuing sequence. He carries her and he's like picking her up and stuff. It's so funny and it's so, it's so classical, like, hero type move. And then the TV falls and Buzz saves Jesse and then it crashes down on him. And everybody's like, oh my gosh. And they start lifting the TV and stuff. And they get Buzz out of there. And man, is he tough as nails because he survived all that. And then he resets and he's back to normal Buzz. It's like, oh, he just needed a crash reset. You know what I mean? A hard reset. So anyways, now they're going to the dump. And yes, they're going to the dump. And now everybody's kind of like just trying to get out of there, just trying to survive. And the three little alien dolls, they try to go after one of the crane machines because they were like, oh, it has a claw in it. And they were really enamored by it. But then they get separated from the group. And then everybody gets thrown into this pile. And again, great in creativity of like understanding how the garbage disposal works is the magnetic and the hard metal stuff have to be lifted up to the top and everybody has to hold on or grab on to something that can like get them above the shredder. And then once it gets through the shredder, they jump down and then, stuff like that is really genius to me. And then we see just what they're getting pushed into. And it's an incinerator. And that moment, again, cinema, pure cinema, when all the toys start grabbing hands together and they're about to get burned alive into the incinerator. They stop fighting and they just cherish each other, you know what I mean? When they start reaching out their hands and stuff, where like they're all fighting against it, like trying to survive. And Buzz is just like, we're not getting out of this. And he grabs Jesse's hand. And then she grabs Bullseye's. And then we see everybody else grabbing hands. And then Buzz reaches out to Woody and they all grab hands. Oh my gosh. I remember being in the theater for this. When that moment happens, pure cinema. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to burn alive. I didn't, no idea. How are they going to get out of this? Purely thinking to myself, like, they're toast. My heart was racing, I remember it so vividly, that moment. And then, light comes up, and then it comes down on them, and it grabs them, and it lifts them up, and it's the three alien dudes operating the crane, saving everybody. Oh my gosh, cinema. That moment was so good. Just pure cinema at its finest. You can't deny it. So anyways, that movie was amazing. That moment was so amazing. Anyways, they got to get back home and they see the garbage truck or the garbage man who they know takes the route to their house. So they hitch a ride, they get over there, they clean themselves up, they get back into the box, and Woody's going to college and everybody else is going into the attic that we know of. And then Woody has another idea, a special idea, and he writes down Bonnie's address. And so he writes down Bonnie's address, and we see Andy going to give her the toys, donating them to another kid who's going to take care of them, who Woody knows is going to take care of them. And we see him pass along everybody like Buzz Lightyear and Jesse and Bullseye and Rex and Ham and everything. And then we see Woody, and we see he's a little bit more hesitant to give over Woody. But then we hear him express how he really feels about all of his toys. He expresses how he feels about Woody, about Buzz. Man, it's so special because that bond between them is like really important. So anyways, he makes Bonnie promise to take care of them, and she agrees. And then Bonnie and Andy start playing. And that's so pure. It's so genuine. It feels so, you can feel them putting love into it, and it's funny and it's cute and it's kind of like, wow, they're really in front of this woman's yard playing with old toys. Like it's special. And I like how the mom just like doesn't get involved. She just like goes about her day and she just like lets these two like just kind of play out and stuff like that. It's so fun. And it's so like kiddish, you know what I mean? It's childlike wonder right there. And then that final goodbye just hits like a ton of bricks. And then seeing that everything is happy again now that Lotso Hugging Bear isn't there. Now that he kind of got taken away and he's now in front of a garbage truck and stuff. And now everybody's getting along. Everybody puts in their fair share. One toy gets abused in the caterpillar room, then they tag out and somebody else comes and gets abused. It's all fair now. It feels like everybody's cooperating or working together. Is it perfect? No, but it's the reality, and now everybody gets a piece of the puzzle. You know what I mean? Everybody gets a piece of the struggle. And they also get a piece of the good, which I think is really cool. So, anyways, in the end, that passing of the torch to Bonnie or a new life with a new kid and stuff like that is so interesting, and it's so it's what we're going through in our lives now, you know what I mean? And I just feel like what a great ending to the story. What a great ending to at least Andy's chapter with those toys. It really is so cool. And so all of that is to say that Toy Story 3 is a perfect ending to the original trilogy. It's such a great way to say goodbye to Andy. It's a story about moving on. It's a story about letting go. It's a story about change. It's a story about, what does a toy do next? You know what I mean? Man, it's so good. So there's so many layers to Toy Story 3. I'm sure there's a bunch of video essays talking about it. But anyways, when you're watching Toy Story 3, reminisce, think about the toys in your life that you grew up playing with. Think about what it means to play with a toy and the imagination and the feeling you had when you were with them, It's so fun to think about remembering those days and the way I feel about it now. It's just so fun, so interesting. But anyways, yeah, think about that when you're watching Toy Story 3. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.